Hello and welcome to Downs Your Way, the Rebecca Downs podcast. I'm Colin Speller and this is episode 8. We've had quite a lot of interest in what goes on backstage at a gig, and a specific request from our listener, let's call him Kay from down south, to cover this in an episode. This is actually quite difficult to do really, because backstage can be very much like flying a commercial airliner. Hours of boredom punctuated by moments of pure terror, or excitement at the very least. And to the extent that there are stories, and believe me, we have some stories, it is difficult to broadcast some of these on the grounds of, well, libel laws and all that. So what we thought we would do is take you through the highs and lows of a gig. In this case, our support to the crazy world of Arthur Brown at Nell's Jazz and Blues in London on Saturday the 25th of January 2020. I'm going to try some live commentary in the build-up and as the day itself unfolds. Then we will get Rebecca's reflections as we chat through how it all went. Where does it all begin? This gig was agreed via our agent several months ago, and in terms of organisation, the next step was to get the advancing details from the venue, which set out times of arrival, sound check, stage, set length and other details. Once I have that, I can work out travel times and agree rendezvous times and points for the band. We travel as 6 people, 5 band members and me, in our 6-seat splitter van, which just about accommodates everybody and all the gear we need. As we lead up to the gig, the next step is to lay in supplies. As a support, or when we are promoting our own gigs, we don't get a rider, so we always take our own stuff. We have a refrigerated cool box for beers and soft drinks. We take some sweet and savoury snacks for the van and the dressing room, and we take a box containing tea, coffee, a kettle, cups, plates, cutlery and everything we need if we have a takeaway meal in the dressing room. All very boring stuff, but the first step is to make sure this is all stocked. A band marches on its stomach, so we need to make sure that it's well supplied. The next bit of prep for me is the merch preparation, basically checking the stocks and making sure the signage is all up to date. After that, it's off to the store to load up the gear. This truck has lost its wheels. So I've just arrived at our extensive warehouse facility in the south of Birmingham city centre, aka the local lock-up store. Task here is to top up various items of merchandise, pack Rebecca's gear, amplifier, pedals, mic stand, boxer kit, etc., and to basically check the van over, so fluids, tyres, and give it a hoover out. So I'll be here about 45 minutes or so, and then head back to base for more prep. Way down in the church of the blind boy, one eye makes you king. I'm now back at base, and I think day before the gig everything is just about sorted. Merch stocks have topped up. Everything's sort of boxed up and ready to go, so it's just a case of loading the van on the morning of the gig. Oh, don't you walk that line, boy, 'cause they got you in lockdown, freeze frame. So we're underway. We've got the merchandise on board, we've got Rebecca's stuff on board, we've got the lady herself on board. And this is stage 1 of the journey when we go over to Steve to pick up Steve, Ab and Nigel and indulge in the Tetris that is the fitting of all of the gear into the van. Not quite all of it, because today's model is merch in first, Vince's bass gear in last. That is variant 1 of the day.
Variant 1, ladies and gentlemen, variant 1. And off we go! Nation saying, take me high, take me higher. This invention's gonna crash and burn, singing hold on.
And we've just arrived at Steve's. Let the Tetris commence.
Hold on, baby, that's fine.
So the van's loaded with everything but Vince's gear, and we're on our way to pick up Vince with 5 of us in the van. Rebecca making most of the noise as usual. So next stop, a rendezvous just off the M40, where we will have the final stage of Tetris, which is fitting Vince's bass gear in the back of an already pretty full van. Update to follow.
Oh, it's a felony witnessed, not a faceless crime.
And we're back on the M40 again with Vince's gear in the back and Vince in the back. Say hello, Vince.
Hello, Vince. Hello, Vince.
Thank you for that. So next stop is the services, and we're checking again then.
Beaconsfield and twisted. When you walk that line, way down in the church of the blind.
So here we are at Beaconsfield Services, where we've stopped for a quick snack break. Voted by the Rebecca Downs Band as Motorway Services of the Year for the last 5 years, and on the basis of this trip, well on its way to earning the 2020 title. So we're back on the road in a minute for the final run into the venue.
In the church of the blind boy, they got you caught in a lockdown, freeze frame.
So a few adventures since the last update. Arrived at the venue and finally got in, was welcomed, told where to load in. Unfortunately, the only place to park was in a bus lane. So after a lot of manoeuvring, we had to park the van opposite, run the gear, cross the road, up a flight of stairs. Fortunately, the headline band were very welcoming and said, no need to bring in your drums, you can use ours. So that helps. So we got the van unloaded. Yours truly is now walking back to the venue, having had to drive probably 5 minutes away to find a parking space. Leave the van, only 2 hours parking, so I'll have to be back in a couple of hours to pick it up and shift it, hopefully closer to the venue for the end of the evening. All pretty standard stuff for a city centre gig, I have to say. Just goes with the territory.
You got my number, but not my name, so that's hot now for one night. All I got is
So we're now in the venue. The band are chilling out while the Arthur Brown band sets up. I'm just setting up the merch table, and we are looking forward to the rest of the evening. It'll be a little while setting up the merch because it's always a bit of a game. This one I've got 3 round tables strung together, which makes a very interesting shape on which to display things, but it's in a good place, top of the stairs, just as people come in, and that's excellent.
take me high, next sensation sets the world on fire. Got the whole damn nation singing, take me high.
After setting up the merch table, my job is to get all of Rebecca's gear out of the various boxes, so guitar stand, leads, in-ear mics, in-ear mic transmitter, amplifier cord. So I've done all that. Oh, and her own mic on her own mic stand. So I've done all that. That's all set up. So as soon as we get to go ahead to go on stage, she can just pick it all up and carry it on, or if needs be, I can do it.
You got my number, but not my name, so that's hot now for one night.
It's 6:15. The Arthur Brown soundcheck is hopefully coming to an end, but I've had to leave the venue to shift the van from one parking zone to the other. I've now found a place just around the corner from the venue. It's parked up here, and the paid parking will take us through to the end of payable parking at 8 o'clock, and they'll be here for the rest of the evening and quite handy for when we need to get out. So I'm going to go back in a minute, and hopefully we'll be loading onto the stage and the sound check will begin. It's always a bit tight when you're a support band as to how much time you're going to get. I think doors are at 7, so we need to get a wiggle on really if we're going to get a decent sound check in, but fingers crossed.
Take me higher, this invention's gonna crash and burn, singing hold on, baby. The next
So I'm back in the venue, and there's a hive of activity as stuff's being taken up onto the stage, and hopefully we'll get set up fairly soon and the sound check can begin.
station sets the world on fire. Got the whole damn nation singing, take me higher, this invention's gonna crash and
Just a little bit about the venue. For those who don't know it, it's actually quite wide, not very deep. There's a bar at the back, stage at the front, obviously. There's a small sort of mosh pit / dance area in front of the stage, and then there's a rail around and a raised area leading out towards the bar. So it'll be packed wide, if not deep, tonight. To the right at the back is a sort of sitting area, and just off that is one of the smaller dressing rooms, not the smallest, but one of the smaller dressing rooms, which thanks to the generosity of the lead band, we're able to share with them. And in there you'll find a fridge, a kettle. We bring our own box of tricks, as I've said, so that's sitting on the floor and plugged into the mains. And somewhere before Rebecca goes on, we're all going to have to squeeze in there to keep out of the way. Hopefully get some food in as well. That's another little task.
Singing, hold on, baby, that's fine. Take me higher.
If you wanted a skill set for the modern day musician that goes beyond musicality or business acumen or social media, it will be waiting. The ability to wait. There's a lot of waiting. As you probably noticed, we left Birmingham originally around noon. It is now 6:30, so there's been a lot of sitting in vans, a lot of sitting around the venue, and only now in the background can you hear the strains of Steve's guitar starting up as he prepares to sound check. So waiting and patience, two important virtues if you're going to do this for a living.
Take me higher. Lift me higher. Take me higher.
Should say a little bit about the merch table of the Crazy World of Arthur Brown. If Crazy is their USP, stock in trade, Blackpool through their stick of rock, then the merch table lives up to that. It is absolutely superb. I think Rebecca has or will put photographs of it on Facebook. It is, yes, unique, I would say, and very, very good.
Got me caught in a lockdown for one night. All I gotta say is, take me high.
So we're just sat in the area outside the very small dressing room, which is currently occupied by Arthur Brown and his assistants, and we are just digesting the sound check, which was terse, to say the least. Not untypically, no fault of anybody like the venue or the headline band. We got on with about half an hour to go. As I said earlier, that became 20 minutes, which became 15, which became 10, and it's really quite difficult to properly sound check a 5-piece band in that time. So best job possible was done that could be done in the time available, and they came off, and we're now sitting here chilling. It's 20 to 8 and they're on in 20 minutes, so they'll start worrying about costumes and stage gear, etc., in the next few minutes, and then they'll be on. So, and the venue's filling up very nicely. People sat around us drinking, looking forward to it.
Sensation sets the world on fire. Got the whole damn nation singing, take me higher. This invention's gonna.
I've come out the venue just to record this because they're on stage and the Downs is in full flow. They went on the dot of 8 o'clock for a 45-minute set. My main task throughout the time is to sort of stand there and wring my hands, and also to keep an eye on the sound, and if necessary have a word with the sound engineer. That's usually a story in its own right, but at the moment it's all sounding good, so I'm going to go back in and look forward to listening to the rest of the set. I'm back in the van outside the venue. Gig went superbly, excellent reception. Everybody seemed to have a great time. Load off was interesting and exciting. Always a problem with small stages and relatively small venues. We can get the gear off the stage in probably about 5 or 6 minutes, but you need a good landing area, really, because you're just basically lifting the stuff off, putting it on the ground, and you then need to break it down, put it away in the various cases and things. Problem really was that the landing area was stage left and the exit was stage right. Fortunately, thanks to the wonderful audience who sort of parted at the front of the stage to let us off there, we were able to get it off. We were able to get it away into the boxes to some extent anyway before the Crazy World of Arthur Brown went on, and then we just had to wait to the end of the evening to pack it up properly and bring it out. I'm going to be honest and say that the capacity for live blogging went out of the window towards the end of the evening because it was either too noisy or I was too busy, so this is being recorded post hoc. As usual, we did most of the merch business during changeover, and hats off to Rebecca for operating the shop on her own while I helped clear the stage. It's always better to have two people at the shop, but the main priority is to get the gear off stage, and where it is obvious that the band are going to struggle, I have to help. After clearing the stage and putting the gear away, it was time for the usual post-mortem. Then we watched some of the Arthur Brown set before clearing up the dressing room ready for the off. We did a bit of merch business at the very end, but as soon as the crowds thinned, I packed up the shop and went to collect the van. Fortunately, the bus lane was not in operation, so I was able to park right outside the exit. The guys brought the stuff down and I packed the load area. We finally got away about 11:30 p.m. after the all-important idiot check, and made pretty good time back with, unusually, no road closures or diversions. After a quick stop at Oxford Services, we dropped Vince off at about 1:20, got to Steve's about 1:50, and I was in the door in Birmingham city centre about 2:20. I was in bed 10 minutes later and asleep not long after that. The aftermath of a gig involves stock taking, counting the merch money, and accounting for everything spent and received. That usually takes an hour or so. Finally, I have to go back to the store with the stuff that we keep there. So that was a 15-hour day with at least 2 hours work either side of it. Great fun as ever, but the $1,000 question is, was it worth it? That's something I will pick up in discussion with Rebecca in a moment. And what about our friend Kay and his desire for some dressing room stories? Not much for you there, I'm afraid, for all the reasons I set out at the start. But I hope you have enjoyed an insight into just what's involved in doing a one-off gig at some distance from where we live. Okay, so I'm now with Rebecca.
Hello.
And I'm going to ask the $1,000 question. How was it for you, darling?
It is $1,000 question because it can be answered on many, many levels. Okay, from a musician's point of view, it's always great to do a gig, and get on stage. And the on-stage bit is the easiest thing in the world. It's everything that surrounds it, which I think is what you're kind of asking. The on-stage bit was absolutely freaking awesome. I mean, the place was jumping. People were with us from the first song. Everyone was going crazy. We seemed to win over a large proportion of the audience. So from that aspect, absolutely bloody amazing. Getting to that is another story, as you've told in the podcast. And obviously for me, being the front of the band and the name of the band, I feel very much a responsibility to my band to make sure that gigs go smooth. And, the trouble is I have no control over that when it's a support, literally none. So it is, we had a very, very fraught sound check, which was nobody's fault. It was just that the other band had problems, which is always one of those things. But then, you've got perhaps not the most, the greatest mindset before you get ready to go on stage. And the day, because of that, was very, very fraught. Again, you'd love, the on stage was amazing. But it is very, very difficult.
I think it's probably worth just explaining to people, because I'm sure most people know this, but just what's involved with a sound check, because I think obviously we take everything onto the stage, we set it all up, and the sound crew fit microphones as and where appropriate. So that's basically to the drums, to the guitar amplifiers. You've obviously got the vocal mics. You've got the bass rigged through in a certain way. You've got the keys rigged through in a certain way. So the first stage of a sound check is really to check the levels of all of those separate, mic'd up things. And in our case, in addition to the various instruments, we've got a drum pad as well. So there's 2 keyboards, set of drums, bass guitar, two lead guitar, rhythm guitar, 2 vocal mics, and the levels of all those have to be set individually and then collectively, if you like. So the sound guy's got to look at how each one sounds one by one, and then how will they sound as you start putting them together. The second element of it, and possibly the most difficult, is then to set the on-stage monitoring.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether any of you have ever stood up in front of a microphone with a full electric band behind you, but I have, in certain unfortunate circumstances, had that experience. I won't go into why. And I can tell you, you cannot hear anything. You cannot hear, well, you can hear the band, but you can't hear your own voice. So that has to be fed back to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And in Rebecca's case, that involves in-ear monitoring, ditto for AB on the drums. But for the others, it involves having a loudspeaker, effectively what they call a wedge on the stage, which is playing back to them some sort of mix of the music that they're playing. And each individual's ideal mix will be different.
Yeah.
So the sound engineer basically has to go through each piece of monitoring, whether that's a wedge or the in-ear monitors, and set the levels of the, 7 or 8 sources of sound at the required levels in each of those things. So a full sound check, cold start, done properly, could take, at least half an hour, sometimes longer.
You'd ideally want an hour.
Yeah, you'd ideally want an hour.
From setup to end, but you very rarely get that with the support. In fact, you just really wouldn't get it with the support. So you've got to, so you're already tense because you know that no matter what, this is going to be, running pretty to the hilt. Also, the thing with in-ear monitors is, for us singers, it's very important to have good monitoring. The thing with in-ear monitoring is I'm only going to hear what the sound guy feeds me. So if he doesn't put any drums through, or he doesn't put any guitar through, or, keys, I just won't hear them. So I need basically a front of house sound with my voice way above it so I can control my delivery to the microphone, and also my guitar above it. Now, on many occasions, I've not had, Steve's guitar. I don't have Steve's voice, even though, it's been set in a sound check for some reason, and we all laugh about it. Sorry, as musicians, that, the sound check goes okay, and then you come to play and nothing sounds the same, monitoring-wise, for some reason that none of us can understand. And then, so, yeah, a lot of the time I've played a gig not being able to hear my own guitar, so I'm just relying on the fact that I know where my fingers have got to go. Not being able to hear, either any instrument, or anything. And if you're in a support situation, sometimes, you can ask the sound guy over the mic to try and correct this, but you don't want to spend too much time doing that because you've only got like half an hour and people are stood there in front of you, and these aren't generally your crowd. They're, new people who are seeing you, so they're not going to be very impressed if all you do is stand there and go, oh, mate, can I have a bit more of my vocal in my ears? So you're under a real pressure, and a lot of the time if you see me take one of my ears out, it's because I need to hear what's going on stage because my ears are failing me, so I'm trying to basically get a double whammy. So a lot of the time, I would say 90% of the time, I'm not hearing what I need to hear, but I'm delivering you a gig when it's a support.
Yeah, so I was at a music managers forum meeting one night, and a guy there was asking me what I did, and I told him about the act and the size of the act and what going to a gig involved, like a potted version of what we've just been through. And I could see his wincing and sucking his teeth. So I said to him, well, what do you do? And he said, I manage DJ producers. And I said, well, what do they go out with? And he said, a data stick.
If only. If only.
So presumably they have to sound check as well. Other thoughts? I mean, what did you make of Arthur Brown? That was interesting.
I actually thought he was a lovely guy. Like, all of his band were absolutely lovely, beautiful people. That is a rarity, so I'm going to cling on to that. He was absolutely adorable. On stage, you know what? I think they do really well in theatres, because the setup with the visual aspect as well could be seen better by the audience. So I think he'd do really well in theatres. I actually thought the show was great but it's something completely different. It's not watching a band, it's watching a show.
Yes, I think you look at the costume changes they do, and they need somewhere on and off stage, don't they, to get on and off. And as I've described already, it was a pretty tight fit without having to add that dimension into it. So yeah, I agree. I thought it was amazing. Really, it was. I'd not seen it before, and I mean the guy's just incredible. I mean, given his age, a real advert for people continuing to perform, well, basically till they drop, really, because he was absolutely astonishing. And as you say, a really, really nice group of people. Okay, so, well, I don't know, any other observations you want to make on the day? I mean, I think we've covered all of the...
I think, the only thing I would like to sort of make clear is my stress levels. At a gig like that, going so far, and because of, rightly or wrongly, the responsibility that I carry towards the guys in the band and making sure they're okay and they're having a good time and everybody's okay. My stress levels are, I can't even tell you, through the absolute roof. Maybe I should just be a diva and just think to hell with it, but I just can't. I love these people. Remember this band, I know people are paid, but then, when you think of the actual hours involved, no matter, payment isn't really a part of it. They must enjoy it, else they wouldn't do it. But it is a whole day experience. That tiny, tiny part of it on the stage is a minuscule element of what consists of the day. So... yeah, it's a very stressful experience for me, and it's always great when the on-stage goes well, regardless of my in-ear sound or whatever. I've just come to the point where you just have to put up with that and get on with it. But yeah, it's highly, highly stressful. That's all I can say.
It's interesting that a lot of the minor TV stations carry these, what do they call them, real-life documentary things where they follow people doing... sometimes a bit quirky, but mostly sort of everyday jobs, driving lorries. And they always do it with a kind of sense of
doom.
Or drama, don't they? Try and add drama. Will he gets to his destination before the boat leaves? Yeah. And I thought, well, we could have done this whole podcast like that, couldn't we? And to be honest... you wouldn't have to go perhaps as far as they do in some of those programs to add the sense of drama, particularly around the getting on the stage, getting off the stage, the sound check. That in particular, there's plenty of drama there quite naturally, really. So, well, anyway, at least we can look forward to the fact that the next 3 gigs we're doing after this are all headline gigs. We're going to the Forum at Darlington, the Edinburgh Blues Club, and the Icebox in Glasgow, and so we will
see you there.
We will see you there, and we will be less stressed.
We will be less stressed, and thank the Lord.
Thank the Lord. So, okay, thank you very much for listening. Once again, as ever, there's a discount code on the merchandise. The code is nice and simple this week. It is GIG, that's in capitals GIG, which you need to put in at the appropriate point in the checkout process, and that will give you a 10% discount on everything you buy.
Does my dad know about that?
No.
because you know what he's like about giving people discounts. Sorry. If any of you have met my dad, you'll know what.
No,
You're giving him a discount. Yes, Dad. Go sit down. Anyway, please. Yeah, sorry, Colin. Please do continue.
No, I don't think he does. He does listen to this actually.
He does. Hello, Dad.
Yes,
Hello, Mom.
He's got YouTube on his telly. So hi, John. Hope you're doing well. And yes, I apologise for offering the discount, but we like to reward our faithful listeners. So thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time with another one of these. As ever, if you've got any feedback or any suggestions, please send them through and we will do our best to incorporate them in future episodes. But for the meantime, it's goodbye from me and...
It's goodbye from him. Good night.
Good night.